Chapter 11:20. Not long after Luo Nan vaguely reported his itinerary, an overseas call came in. It was his former secretary, Yin Luo. She was currently the vice-chairman of the Luo Nan and his Friends Foundation. She was in charge of the foundation's daily work. Luo Nan took advantage of this opportunity to leave. "Mister, your itinerary remains the same today." "Yes, I'll be leaving right away." Luo Nan turned around and waved to his family. He went upstairs to change his clothes. Mrs. Luo Shuqin confirmed from behind, "Are you eating at home tonight?" "Yes, yes." Luo Nan responded casually. Yinla spoke at this time, "Mister, are you going by yourself?" Luo Nan returned to his room. He adjusted his clothes as he spoke, "Of course I'm going by myself. It's the most convenient." Yinla had already called him last night. The reason why she was so concerned was because she was the one who provided the coordinates for Luo Nan's destination today. It was an abandoned laboratory located northwest of Spring City at the southern end of the Hingduan Mountains. It was also the place where Luo Nan's mother, Mrs. Bo Qingwen, had died. Luo Nan wished to go there to offer his sacrifice. This was something he had desired ever since he could remember, but he was unable to do so. Today was Luo Nan's birthday, and it was also the anniversary of Bo Qingwen's death. He wouldn't delay any longer no matter what. "It's like this, mister." Yinla did her best to sense Luo Nan's emotions. She spoke carefully, "I reported to you that I found an informant when I confirmed the coordinates. He worked in the laboratory back then. Today, he found me and said that someone hired him to lead the way to the laboratory ruins. It seemed to be for the sake of offering his sacrifice. He asked me if I was one of them." Luo Nan furrowed his brows. "Who's the employer?" "He's not too sure. He said it was arranged by the boss." Yinla paused for a moment. Seeing that Luo Nan didn't immediately ask for details, she explained softly, "It's been half a year since the end of last year until now. Several groups of people have confirmed the location of the laboratory ruins through him. Right now, the pattern has already been set." "I know. It's my problem." Luo Nan had long understood this point. It was nothing more than his radiance during this period of time. People coveted him, wanting to trace back to the source and obtain some benefits. After the series of events with Snake Tongue and Jin Tong, these people didn't dare to come to Xia City. Otherwise, places like the North Bank Gear and the Tree Hole Space would have been sieved several times. They couldn't come to Xia City, so some of them went to the wilderness to search for traces of the Luo family's laboratory. The exposure of the Luo cult and the 70-format laboratory back then might have had a lot to do with Luo Nan. Right now, both sides had Luo Nan's telepathic lock onto them, and there were people searching elsewhere. They searched, and they found this place. Luo Nan laughed and didn't mention it again. He looked at himself in the mirror and went downstairs. He asked Yinlu, "Is there anything else?" Indeed, there were. Yinlu became more careful with her words. "The foundation will send employees to various places and establish offices. Some cities need to submit information, especially the census plan. They can only proceed to the next step after the review." Luo Nan laughed. "Ha City and Shi City are in such a mess. Do you want them?" It just so happened that he was walking to the staircase on the first floor. When he heard the keywords Ha City and Shi City, everyone in the family, including Madame Luo Shuqing, looked over. They looked at Luo Nan's side, white on the inside and black on the outside. His clothes were concise and solemn. They were a bit stunned. Luo Nan waved his hand at them and quickly left through the living room. "Their attitude is very firm." Yinlu replied in a low voice. "The voices of support are very loud." This matter involved the operation of the Luo Nan and his Friends Foundation, as well as the direction of the future global census. Luo Nan had already set the tone on this point. If they wanted to do a census, they would start with Ha City and She City, where the contradictions were the sharpest and the most chaotic. It seemed like the contradictions were sharp, but it was actually easier to fish in troubled waters. They could even blur the focus when necessary. But to do all this, they needed the full support of the city administrators. Of course, the most important ones were Apollon and Bat Guru. Putting the latter aside, no matter how difficult it was to deal with Apollon, he had the eye of the secret contract to mediate in the middle. There shouldn't be any major problems. But Luo Nan had communicated with Blood Demon last time. He had to pay attention to the subtle relationship between Apollon, the Apocalypse Laboratory, and Li Wei. But before Luo Nan could pay attention, a demonic moth appeared on the other side. The census plan and a series of information could be coarse or fine. The audit could be lenient or strict. This was a common method used by the administration to control people. They didn't need to control people. They could grasp the progress through the plan and understand the substantial progress of the global census. If Ha City and She City were like this, then the 86 cities would follow suit. The Foundation wouldn't need to do any work in the future. Luo Nan wasn't angry when he encountered this matter. From his perspective, it was much better for Ha City to send a demonic moth this early than for the Foundation to toss and turn after it had fully started its work. On the contrary, it had the effect of a warning. Besides, who would really count on the Foundation to do a census? If the spearhead were to be pointed over there, it could be considered as helping to cover up. But right now, the first thing he thought of was to circle around him. Even if one didn't think with their knees, one would know that this youth who had suddenly appeared in the boundless wilderness was either an idiot or a lucky person. Or he was a special character that needed special attention. Looking at his bare body, he didn't look like the brainless donkey traveler of the present age who used his feet to measure the wilderness. He was dressed as if he was going to attend a funeral. Lieutenant Colonel Chin subconsciously glanced behind him. This was because the key person in the escort this time was dressed a bit similar to the one over there. He looked behind him. The old man he was paying attention to was frowning and closing his eyes. He was doing his best to fight against his motion sickness. And the guide that he had specially hired was sitting there in a very restrained manner. On the other hand, the valiant and beautiful female graduate student was leisurely fiddling with the projection. Yes, this person had quite a high level of authority. As long as she didn't randomly take pictures, she could do whatever she wanted. Lieutenant Colonel Chin was still bickering when someone said in his ear, "This person looks familiar." Captain Cho. Cho Wei, who was beside him, was a bit lower in rank than Lieutenant Colonel Chin. But he had the halo of a Spring City hero. He was also a full-time member in charge of this security mission. Lieutenant Colonel Chin still valued Cho Wei's opinion, especially when Cho Wei's words had substance. "You've seen him before." Cho Wei shook his head. "I think I saw him in the distributed information." Lieutenant Colonel Chin cast his gaze towards the onboard AI projection interface. It had long since analyzed the recorded image, but there were no results. He could basically confirm that this person wasn't a resident of Spring City. Then, where did the information come from? Lieutenant Colonel Chin could only ask. As a burner, Cho Wei's authority in certain areas was above his. "Hello, Junior Luo." Before Cho Wei could reply, the female graduate student had already turned on the communicator. She was probably calling the school. Lieutenant Colonel Chin frowned. Before he could say anything, his sensitive ears heard a faint echo from the other side. "Senior Sister Tang. I see you." The one who was surprised wasn't the other side, but the one in the car. The other side laughed. "I see you too." At this time, on the projected interface of the AI, the teenager waved his hand in the direction of the camera. Very quickly, the other side gave a thumbs up, looking like a poor backpacker asking for a ride. Lieutenant Colonel Chen only felt that it was absurd. At this moment, two people in the car spoke at the same time. "Stop the car." The one who spoke was the female graduate student who had called earlier. The other was Captain Cho Wei, who was beside her. At this moment, the car was only about 2 kilometers away from the teenager. Lieutenant Colonel Chen subconsciously replied, "Stop now. Bring him up." The female graduate student replied matter-of-factly. Cho he actually didn't object. Lieutenant Colonel Chen's brows were tightly locked. Due to his trust in Cho He, a professional, he still readily agreed. "Stop over there for a moment." 2 minutes later, the armored motorcade stopped. The teenager boarded the car without a trace of politeness. His mouth was quite sweet as he repeatedly said things like, "Sorry for the trouble, everyone." As the commander, Lieutenant Colonel Chen actually didn't react. He just stared blankly at the information Cho He had pulled out. At this time, the old man in the back of the car who couldn't withstand the tossing and turning opened his eyes. He just happened to meet the teenager face to face. He was a bit muddle-headed from the motion sickness just now. "Hey, this is... You're Professor Wu." The teenager's attitude was very respectful. He still bowed in the narrow space. "I've often heard Senior Sister Tang and Senior Sister Tian mention you and Professor Pan." The old man in the car was Professor Wu Zunliang. He was older but his mind was first class. He was startled for a moment before he straightened his back. Tian Si. You're... Yes, she's mentioned you many times. Qingwen and Zhongheng's child, Luo Yuandao's grandson, Luo Nan. Luo Nan bowed again. "It's me, Professor Wu." Chapter 11:22. Sure enough, it was Luo Nan. Lieutenant Colonel Chen pulled his gaze away from the information with great difficulty. Even though the content he saw was incomplete due to the issue of authority, the master before him was undoubtedly a huge trouble on the level of a human-shaped killing machine. Last year in Xia City, last month in Ban City, he had caused a great deal of panic. Now he had come to Spring City. Lieutenant Colonel Chen was unwilling to let Luo Nan get on the car. Of course he was unwilling. But this master had even made the gesture of hitching a ride. If Lieutenant Colonel Chen dared to refuse, only the heavens knew whether or not an infrasonic wave would immediately follow. Of course, looking at Lieutenant Colonel Chen's attitude toward Professor Wu Zunliang, the infrasonic wave would most likely have a direction. The target would only be Lieutenant Colonel Chen himself. All sorts of thoughts rose and fell in Lieutenant Colonel Chen's mind. He madly added scenes for himself, but in the end, it was only a method to reduce the pressure. As a qualified military personnel, he promptly sent the news of Luo Nan's appearance in Spring City to the higher command nodes, giving those truly powerful people headaches. But then again, Luo Nan was the most worry-free person in the car just from the surface. He perfectly displayed the cleverness that a person his age should have in front of a senior like Wu Zunliang. "Oh my God, I called you so many times. Why didn't you come to the house?" In the end, it was our family's old Pan who took the initiative to find you. Wu Zunliang was an old man who was full of energy. His voice was loud and clear. Once his emotions rose, there was no room for others to speak. Plus, he was good at making decisions for others. He pulled Luo Nan to sit beside him and spoke over and over again. "You're going to offer sacrifices, right? Who are you coming with? By yourself? This is too dangerous. Let's go together. Let's go together." What else could Luo Nan say aside from nodding? Even in Acumen College, Professor Wu Zunliang was famous for his temper and nagging. He was like this with people he hated, and he was like this with people he liked. A dozen seconds later, Luo Nan couldn't take it anymore. His gaze turned to Tang Yi, who was also peony. Tang Yi intentionally used the brim of her hat to block his line of sight. Luo Nan was helpless. He could only save himself. He took the initiative to pull Wu Zunliang into a new topic. Didn't your research come to an end? Did you come to Spring City to take it a step further? Hey, you pay attention to this field as well. Did you listen to the report at the academy? I was out of town at the time, but it's true that I've been paying attention all this time. Senior Sister Tang has provided me with quite a bit of information. Luo Nan quickly dragged Tang Yi into the water. Senior Sister never mentioned this to you. Thanks to her care, I have a laboratory in the Mystic Arts Research Society under her rule, which is at North Shore Gear. Wu Zunliang wasn't an old pedant with a one-track mind. His emotions had just gotten to the top of his head, but now his thoughts spun a few more times. He recalled the relevant information his wife had mentioned, as well as a few rumors within the circle. He used his old eyes that weren't dizzy to size up Luo Nan a few more times. You're so young. You're only 16, and you're already taking over old Luo's job. 17. Luo Nan corrected him seriously. Looking at your face and listening to your croaky voice, I'd believe it even if you cut off 3 or 5 years. As for your height, there's still room for improvement. Back then, Zhongheng and Qingwen weren't short. Wu Zunliang saw that Luo Nan was about to stray thousands of miles from the main topic, but he used his rich experience to pull the topic back. I heard from old Pan that you're more interested in Qingwen's original path. You seem to have quite some achievements. You rely on your own ability to make a living. You're young, but you're amazing. Luo Nan laughed. You flatter me. There's no need to flatter me. I still have more to say. We men aren't strangers. There are some things I'm not afraid to say to you. From the looks of it, this project is quite imaginative. It can incite people even more. In comparison, the evidence is a bit weaker. It's fine for a young man to be interested. You don't have to worry about putting your energy into it. But you need to make thorough preparations. Don't have thoughts of accomplishing everything in one go. Tang Yi lowered her head, pulling the brim of her hat even lower. Luo Nan blinked. Then you came over this time for the sake of enriching evidence. I'm here to fan the flames for the investor. I want to see if I can stir up a few sparks. Wu Zunliang really didn't avoid it at all. You have to do a few things to spend other people's money. It's still a bit early for you to learn these things. Luo Nan laughed again. Wu Zunliang couldn't really lead a child astray, so he changed the topic. Oh right. Let me introduce you. This is Dr. Wang Xiu. He once worked with Qingwen in the laboratory. This time, I'm asking him to take us to the laboratory ruins. He was referring to the tightest person in the car. Luo Nan turned his gaze and bowed slightly to the balding middle-aged man. Hello, Dr. Wang. Ah, hello. Wang Xiu looked like a pure researcher. He wasn't very good at socializing. He needed Wu Zunliang to liven up the atmosphere. Wang Xiu, you should have met Luo Nan before. He stayed in the wilderness for nearly 3 years when he was young. I've met him before. In the health pod. Wang Xiu instinctively felt that something was wrong when he spoke to this point. He hurriedly shut his mouth, but he didn't know how to continue. He was stuck there. Luo Nan was a bit startled, but a smile soon formed on the corner of his mouth. I've heard my aunt talk about this before. It's just that it's been passed down a few times. I don't know the details anymore. I can only guess blindly by myself. Is the health pod still there? It was still there when we left. Wang Xiu was shrouded by Luo Nan's gaze. He inexplicably felt a bit breathless. His words were a mess. Then there was an earthquake. I don't know what happened. Earthquake. Luo Nan's consciousness was a bit erratic. Lieutenant Colonel Chen adjusted his state of mind at this time. He took the initiative to talk. In '94, a group of volcanoes in the southwest suddenly erupted, causing an earthquake in the surroundings of Spring City. The laboratory was abandoned for many years. It wasn't maintained, so it was unfortunately destroyed. But there wasn't any subsequent excavations. It's basically still in a natural state. Luo Nan nodded towards Lieutenant Colonel Chin. Actually, he had already learned of the relevant information before coming here. The source of the information was none other than Dr. Wang Xiu, who was in the car. Luo Nan's mind wandered just now because he thought of the source of the destruction of the laboratory ruins. It was a headless case of the inner world, the disappearance of the extraordinary Jin Buwan. Under the relatively restricted environment of space and time, two or more matters that were originally completely unrelated would have a high probability of being related. And the more information a person grasped, the higher their position, and the wider their field of view, the more frequent this sort of coincidence or interaction would be in their eyes. The current Luo Nan was probably one of the most qualified people on earth to speak such words. He didn't need to share his feelings in this kind of environment. He just smiled at Wang Xiu. You really did the right thing in finding Dr. Wang. I heard from Yinlu this morning that you contacted her and asked if everyone was in the same group. At the time, I thought that I had other arrangements, so I didn't come together. But I never thought that it would be such a coincidence that the high and the low would converge. It's nothing. It's nothing. Dr. Wang Xiu wasn't an idiot. He had already said this, so how could he not know Luo Nan's identity? It was just that there was a bit of a psychological barrier when it came to connecting the rich and overbearing financial backer, the boss of the woman with the extraordinary way of talking, with this 16 or 17-year-old youth before him. He was a bit dazed for a time. Wu Zunliang introduced Lieutenant Colonel Chin to Luo Nan, saying that Luo Nan had settled down at the supply base that Lieutenant Colonel Chin was in charge of last year. Everyone had a pleasant cooperation and so on. Luo Nan didn't say anything to this person. He was just polite. However, Luo Nan's attitude towards Cho Wei, the head of security responsible for Wu Zunliang's group, was a bit different. You must be Captain Cho. I've heard a lot about you. Senior Sister Tang just so happened to be in Spring City at the end of last year. She even specially introduced your deeds. Sister Yuan also mentioned you. She said that you are firm and unyielding. If you weren't like this, then you wouldn't have such deeds. It seems that you and Tian Bang are in the same batch. You flatter me. Cho Wei had experienced many trials and tribulations during this period of time. He had already trained the ability to remain unfazed by praise and humiliation. His response towards Luo Nan's praise was indifferent. Of course, part of this was because he was the same as Lieutenant Colonel Chin. He didn't know how to interact with this highly dangerous person in a more appropriate manner. Lieutenant Colonel Chin promptly interjected at this time, Mr. Luo Nan, did you come to Spring City specifically to visit a grave? Lieutenant Colonel Chin actually accompanied Luo Nan out of courtesy in the escort team. This was mainly because the wilderness laboratory ruins were within the range of his supply base. Cho Wei had taken over Senior Colonel Meng Tu's position from last year. This also resulted in some words that Cho Wei spoke rather stiffly. Lieutenant Colonel Chin was relatively more natural. Unfortunately, Lieutenant Colonel Chen's slick mind wasn't within the scope of Luo Nan's consideration. He shook his head, I can't say. It's just a thought. Luo Nan's response was more or less unexpected. Lieutenant Colonel Chin choked for a moment. Tang Yi's gaze turned to Dr. Wang at this time. Dr. Wang was a bit startled. Fortunately, he reacted and took the initiative to explain, Dr. Bu wasn't buried here. The environment of the wilderness back then was much worse than it is now. When we come to work in the wilderness laboratory, we have to do two things before we start working. The first is to sign a risk notice. The second is to make a will. After Dr. Bu passed away, her ashes were scattered in the wilderness according to the requirements of her will. There was nothing we could do about it. Wu Zunliang had a wealth of experience working in the wilderness. He patted Luo Nan's hand and sighed, "There's no such thing as a calm burial in the wilderness. There's no space for a peaceful burial. The best ending for an unfortunate death here is to leave behind a handful of ashes." Qingwen was a bit more free and easy than others. Wang Xiulian nodded. "Actually, we advised him to bring the ashes back to the city, but Dr. Luo still followed the will. At that time, he drove to the plateau alone. I heard that he threw it near a frontline laboratory." Luo Nan's gaze cut over, and Dr. Wang subconsciously shut his mouth. He didn't know if he said something wrong or not. Wu Zunliang did not pay attention to these details. He continued to muse, "All these years, my old Pan has been brooding over this. He doesn't even know where Qingwen is buried. It wasn't easy for me to get the news from Luo Yuan, but it's just like what you said, Xiao Nan." Luo Nan didn't look at anyone this time. His eyelids drooped as he repeated the key words from Wu Zunliang's words, Luo Yuan. Chapter 11:23. Wu Zunliang went, "Oh, it's that young fellow who came from the same orphanage as Qingwen. He should be 50 years old this year. Back then, he almost became my graduate student. In the end, he became Qingwen's follower and went to the wilderness. You're young. You probably don't have an impression." "No, I have a very good impression. After all, it was a rarely seen dimensional crossbow that utilized the laws of the polar domain. It nearly took my life." Of course, Luo Nan just revealed a smile at this time. He seems to have been operating a business in the wilderness these past few years. He's doing quite well. He also has a stake in Dr. Wang's company. Wu Zunliang was rather emotional. "It's not easy." "Really?" Luo Nan's gaze followed Wu Zunliang's description and he saw Dr. Wang's expression turn a bit odd. Dr. Wang just nodded his head over and over. From the perspective of a city dweller, the meaning behind operating a business in the wilderness and doing well was quite subtle. Wu Zunliang was quite natural. "We originally agreed to go together, but he had something to do at the last minute, so he introduced Dr. Wang. Has he been in contact with you guys these past few years?" "No. I heard my aunt mention that the two of them communicated when Dad was here, but their relationship didn't seem to be too good." Half of Luo Nan's words were fabricated. He had indeed heard the main contents of the story from Mrs. Luo Shuqing once. Of course, Mrs. Luo Shuqing had only mentioned a fellow with the surname Luo at the time. Due to a certain suggestion from her father, the project succeeded. The fellow called her father in his excitement and cursed him, calling him a deserter, a piece of trash, and so on. Luo Nan had some suspicions about who it was, but he didn't know for sure. But from the contents relayed by his aunt, it should be someone active in the wilderness, someone who once worked together with his father. Luo Nan highly suspected that this Luo was actually Luo, but he didn't have any clear evidence. But they were chatting right now. They needed to gather information and expand in depth. They needed a starting point. Professor Wu Zunliang laughed and sighed when he heard this. The matters of young people. Of course, he's not young anymore. He changed the topic at this point. "Little Nan, you're in your prime. I heard you talk about this sister and that sister. You seem to know quite a few. You seem to be quite likable." "Huh? Yeah, everyone knows about Boss Luo's hobbies." Tang Yi added with a smile. Realization dawned on Wu Zunliang. "I remember now. Old Pan did mention this before." In the end, Luo Nan had seen many shameless people during this period of time. He had many references when imitating them. Luo Nan just revealed an awkward yet polite smile. Then he quickly changed topics. "You know, my situation here is special. Uncle and Aunt don't talk to me about what happened in the past. It's impossible to ask Grandpa, old Luo. I haven't seen him for a few years. The older I get, the more I can't stand it. How is he? Luo Nan responded in a reserved manner, it can't be any worse. Professor Wu Zunliang sighed yet again. His heart was filled with feelings of pity for this little fellow, Luo Nan. He strove to recall more and more, displaying his specialty in nagging to start a long chat mode. He still felt that this was not enough. He even took the initiative to start a video call with Professor Pan Wen. First, he dragged Luo Nan over to appear on camera together. He showed off today's wondrous travel experience. As expected, he stirred up the emotions of Professor Pan Wen. Then he dragged his wife over to talk about the past. That's where the convoy is. They quickly advanced toward the laboratory ruins in this atmosphere. Lieutenant Colonel Chen, whose mind was filled with past events, was roughly a dozen kilometers away. He was worried about whether or not he would encounter additional risks due to knowing too much. At the same time, he dutifully informed Luo Nan, there's around 5 minutes left. Are we almost there? The limited field of view of the armored vehicle clearly couldn't satisfy Wu Zunliang's requirements. He simply stood up and looked through the windshield in front of him. Just stop for a bit. Professor Pan Wen felt quite helpless towards his wife's temperament. The two of them were both loud and clear. They had a few conflicts when they were talking about the past. It was inevitable that they would get a bit tired after yelling at each other from several thousand kilometers away. He took this opportunity to take the initiative to call a truce, we're almost there. We need to take care of things. What's the point of being so anxious and pale? Luo Nan. Professor Pan. I've heard quite a bit of news about you these past 2 days. Let's not talk about anything else. Since you've already made a name for yourself, you need to put on an act. Let your mother's soul in heaven be at ease. Let my shop shine. Oh my. What are you saying these pretentious words for? Wu Zunliang pointed at the projection area in annoyance. Luo Nan chuckled and responded with drooping eyes, as you wish. Professor Pan Wen seemed to laugh and sigh. He simply cut off the video. Wu Zunliang was still mumbling, I'm afraid I've seen too much in the past 2 years. I didn't realize it before. No one dared to respond. At this time, it was the turn of the others to take the initiative to change the topic. Tang Yi estimated the distance and turned to Dr. Wang. I remember you saying before you came that senior sister Qingwen didn't stay in this laboratory for long. Yeah. From what I remember, Dr. Bu stayed in the 100 Races laboratory for around half a year. She was mainly in the Highland Frontier laboratory before. She might not come down even once in a year or two. The main reason she came down this time was to wait to give birth. She seems to be suffering from severe altitude sickness. Dr. Wang's voice grew softer and softer. Even though his EQ was lacking, he felt that it was inappropriate to speak halfway through and associate what happened later. Plus, Luo Nan was separated from him by Professor Wu. Though he still had a smile on his face, Dr. Wang inexplicably felt that the atmosphere in the car had become very oppressive. He instinctively wanted to shut his mouth, but the young boss Luo, who came up to get a free ride, leaned forward slightly. His smiling and curved eyebrows were completely exposed before Dr. Wang's eyes. He took the initiative to ask, I know a bit about Mom's matters on the Highland. That can be considered her profession. In this laboratory, the 100 Races, right? What is she doing? This was like the pure curiosity of a child. At least Luo Nan showed it this way. It looked like he wasn't thinking too much. My ass. If Dr. Wang hadn't communicated with Mrs. Yin these past few days, he might have believed Luo Nan when he saw Luo Nan's standard, obedient grandson appearance. But he had such a meticulous and capable subordinate. Moreover, Luo Nan had casually extended his hand to stop the military vehicle. Luo Nan made Lieutenant Colonel Chen and Captain Cho exceptionally cautious and well-behaved. Could such a fellow really be pure and stupid? Dr. Wang relied on his IQ to see some clues, but his EQ was insufficient to support an appropriate response. The more this was the case, the more speechless he became. Next to him, Luo Nan's seemingly simple and pure smile gave him more and more pressure. Fortunately, Tang Yi followed Luo Nan's lead and asked at this time, "Dr. Wang, you research genetic engineering, right? Since the 100 Races laboratory is in the wilderness, it should be researching mutant genes, right? Our fields of study cross paths." "Ah, yes. But I'm doing it very shallowly. I'm saying that I'm doing it relatively shallowly. Actually, I'm really ashamed of the 10 years I've spent since returning from the wilderness." As long as he could open his mouth to speak, he could erase the awkwardness and reduce the pressure he felt from Luo Nan. Dr. Wang couldn't care less. "Actually, the things I'm researching right now are much shallower and more fragmented than when I was in the laboratory. Let's not talk about the direction. There are many rules and regulations that I don't dare to jump out of." Having said this, Dr. Wang looked at the two military personnel at the front of the vehicle. He couldn't help but feel a bit guilty. Tang Yi just so happened to continue at this time. "I heard my teacher say that Mr. Luo Yuandao's level of thought experimentation and project design is far from what the results of the laboratory can reflect." "That's not what I said." Wu Zunliang chuckled. "My original words are that the things in his brain are like flying a kite." Chapter 11:24. When he got out of the car, Wu Zunliang was still confused. Home. There shouldn't be anyone left in her family. Back then, old Luo Tuo Panda was old Pan's younger brother. At that time, he was working in Spring City. Old Luo asked him to help recruit a few graduate students who could work nearby. I felt that it was tough for Wu Jun to study alone in Spring City, so I spoke up for her. Yes, it's Professor Panda. Lil Wu and I were recruited in the same batch as him. Lil Wu is the youngest in this batch." Dr. Wang was the first to get out of the car. He breathed in the slightly hot and dry air of the wilderness and felt that the pressure on him had lessened a little. His body movements became a lot livelier, and he nodded like he was pounding garlic. When it was Wu Zunliang's turn, he refused Tang Yi's support. When Luo Nan took over, he didn't refuse, but he still put on a vigorous posture. He even jumped a little at the end. At the same time, he did not stop talking. At that time, I was also thinking that Wu Jun's personality was relatively weak, and she would not be able to come up with anything on her own. She might as well borrow old Luo's name to train herself. In the end, she really dived headfirst into it. It's just that your Luo family has infected her with mysteriousness. She didn't even say anything about that project of hers. It was old Luo who mentioned it earlier that it was an ecological network at the genetic level aimed at the mutants, distributed aberration gene network ecology research, Professor Wang blurted out. It was rare for him to say the name so fluently. Luo Nan raised his eyebrows, but then he took the initiative to change the topic. Your joints and muscles are quite active. Luo Nan gave an appropriate evaluation. She usually takes care of herself properly. She soaks in the health pod quite a bit. Moreover, it should be targeted training. Wu Zunliang felt that Luo Nan's words were objective and that his vision was unique. Wu Zunliang felt quite comforted in his heart. City people do field work. Don't they have to put in a bit of effort? As the old man spoke, he stood still and looked around. This area was still very desolate, but within his field of vision, including the area under his feet, he could see faint traces of human activity. Occasionally, he could see edges and corners in the depths of the weeds, which were the remains of some buildings. This place was indeed in ruins, the kind that was completely destroyed. The most eye-catching thing in the vicinity was the vehicle and personnel that they had brought with them. Other than the armed vehicle that had transported them over, there were nearly 20 soldiers or military-style bodyguards on the other two armored vehicles. They were all equipped with exoskeletons, and there were even 4 deep blue walkers inside. They had already pulled up a cordon around them. Generally speaking, 1 or 2 grade B ability users would not dare to provoke this team. Luo Nan looked at Tang Yi. Your sponsor is quite generous. After all, it's a project that has a high chance of being selected as one of the Star Alliance's Millennium Focus topics. Furthermore, it's especially easy to use in terms of concept and size. Tang Yi pinched the brim of her hat and smiled subtly. Compared to the possible profits, the research funding is only a small amount. At this time, Lieutenant Colonel Chen walked over from the front of the car. Professor Wu, according to the data in the database, there are no longer any mutant species of B and above in the surrounding area. The closest mutant nest is 200 kilometers away, so it's basically safe. But it's best if we don't stay for too long. This is still an area where low-altitude predators frequently roam. Okay. Wu Zunliang agreed without meaning it. His gaze shifted from Luo Nan's face to Dr. Wang. We don't have any concept of this place. We'll leave the rest to you. It's been a few years since I've been here. I definitely remember the way. Right now, Dr. Wang was practically the focus of everyone's attention. He couldn't help but be a bit nervous. He subconsciously found an excuse for himself, but soon he made another statement under Luo Nan's gaze. He gestured with his hand as he spoke, inviting the group of people to move forward. There's actually quite a distance between this place and the original core area of the laboratory. What we see before us is just a defensive bunker from back then. Half of it is above ground and the other half is underground. The laboratory is completely underground, so the damage caused by the earthquake was extremely severe. Luo Nan didn't understand, so he asked, why is it underground? There's a natural karst cave there. But wouldn't that be even more dangerous? The danger level of mutants will be even higher in a humid environment with little light or even no light. Ah! Dr. Wang was speechless. Luckily, Luo Nan didn't delve too deeply into the matter. The group of people continued forward. The outer cordon also moved along with them. There were also 3 armed vehicles, causing quite a clamor in the wasteland. Luo Nan cast his gaze over, but he didn't say anything in the end. However, Lieutenant Colonel Chen, who had been paying attention to the changes in Luo Nan's expression, immediately pulled on Captain Chow's arm. He exchanged a few glances with Captain Cho. Perhaps there was also internal communication. In short, Captain Cho hesitated for a few seconds before giving the order to have the armed vehicle stand by. Only the security personnel followed. Without the rumbling of machinery, the surrounding environment suddenly became much quieter. It was to the extent that Dr. Wang's voice became all the clearer. It collapsed the most severely during the earthquake. Luo Nan turned to look at him. Is it there? Ah. Actually, it's a bit to the side. Dr. Wang did his best to organize his words. In the year 80, the laboratory had already been captured. Everyone was hiding in a safe house. In the end, they were threatened by those people outside with explosions. It seems that there were mutants that could travel through the soil and so on. It was a complete mess. The collapsed area was the area that suffered the heaviest damage back then. Everyone was in a state of panic for the next few years. Their finances were strained, so they never had time to repair it. Dr. Wang didn't describe the situation back then clearly, aside from becoming long-winded due to his nervousness. He didn't even know as much as Luo Nan did from the data. However, it was this lively mood that drew in a feeling of immersion that was hard to embody with the cold numbers in the manuscript. Luo Nan's gaze stopped on Dr. Wang's face. Perhaps it was because of his gaze that Dr. Wang was unable to continue. It's probably because of this reason. Luo Nan pursed his lips slightly. Dr. Wang. You know that I don't really care about why this place has become like this. If it was possible, I would like to hear more about the matters concerning my mother. It's like this. Dr. Bo really lived in seclusion back then. The laboratory's environment wasn't too suitable for pregnant women, so we didn't see her often. In fact, if it wasn't for the accident, I heard that Dr. Bo would have been transferred to Spring City to have a miscarriage. Why didn't she go earlier to have a miscarriage? Why did the accident happen? This. Dr. Wang was stumped. A low and hoarse voice rang out in front of the group of people during this awkward moment. It overflowed the security personnel's warning line and was clearly transmitted. Why are there so many whys? If you really want to find a reason, it's nothing more than the terrible curiosity of your Luo family. It brought out bad luck, trouble, and calamity. It infected her and destroyed her. That's all. The security personnel on the warning line and their equipped exoskeletons, including the 4 deep blue walkers, only responded with an alarm after the voice rang out. The 3 armored vehicles that were lagging behind started up accordingly and came whistling over. However, the person who caused all of this did not make any further moves. Earlier, he had walked up from the entrance of the collapsed area as if he was walking up a staircase. He stood at the edge of the area, wearing the lab coat that was not buttoned up. The corner of his coat was swaying along with the hot and dry air of the wilderness. At first glance, it looked like the staff who stayed behind to welcome the arrival of the guests. Chapter 11:25. An unexpected character had appeared so openly in front of the warning line. Moreover, the alarm had only sounded after the other party had spoken. This was undoubtedly a humiliating failure for Captain Cho and the other security personnel. But Captain Cho didn't have the leisure to taste humiliation. He immediately made adjustments. Through the dynamo core implanted in his body, he commanded the security personnel at the front of the warning line to adjust their formation. He formed a link with the other 4 deep blue walkers in the formation to construct a formatted space together. It was also at this moment that Captain Chow's body, which was originally like an ordinary person's, began to bulge. The fine bone fiber structure flipped out of his muscles and soon formed a dense layer, forming a complicated and regular arrangement. There was also a dark blue reflection on the edge, as if it was a fish-scale armor made of steel. In reality, the inner layer of this armor did indeed have a large amount of traces of special strengthening. It was absolutely not the result of a simple mutation. Clearly, while Captain Cho was undergoing treatment in isolation, whether it was out of his own will or not, he had indeed received a considerable degree of research and modification, so much so that he could perform some kind of active mutation and achieve a deep integration with the Deep Blue platform. Captain Cho, can you assist our Foundation in doing some research later? Captain Chow's expression was mostly hidden under the scale armor. Moreover, he was facing straight ahead. No changes could be seen. On the other side, Lieutenant Colonel Chen couldn't help but turn his head. He just happened to see Luo Nan, who had been supporting Wu Zunliang as a polite junior. Luo Nan withdrew his hand and went straight ahead. There was even a bit of a smile on his face as he passed by Captain Cho. He gave the former a slight nod. Perhaps it was an illusion. But in any case, from Lieutenant Colonel Chen's point of view, Luo Nan wasn't the least bit surprised by this unexpected situation. Moreover, Captain Cho and Lieutenant Colonel Chen didn't have the right to stop him if he wanted to go forward. Only Wu Zunliang sensed that the atmosphere wasn't right. He raised his voice and shouted, "Luo Nan." It was also at this moment that the 2 names that came out of his mouth looked at each other across the warning line. Compared to Luo Yuan's preemptive show of strength, Luo Nan's observation was more meticulous. Or perhaps it could be said that he was a bit more brazen. He sized up the person in front of him from head to toe, especially the person's obviously old clothes. Several seconds later, Luo Nan spoke with an admiring tone, it's really amazing to be able to find clothes to cover your body in this environment. Luo Yuan's gaze never left Luo Nan. When he heard Luo Nan's words, his overly thin cheeks twitched slightly. But in the end, he still responded indifferently. After all, I've stayed here for a long time. It's normal for me to keep some clothes. The people around them were confused, but the two didn't seem to have any intention of explaining. Luo Nan turned his head around and nodded at the stupefied Dr. Wang. It looks like a more suitable explanation has come uninvited. Ah, this. Dr. Wang did not know whether to respond or not. The muscles on Luo Yuan's cheeks twitched again, and he smiled coldly. I don't want to say it again. Personal emotions can't be taken seriously. That's the truth. Are you flaunting your preposterous bigotry in front of me? Luo Nan continued to walk forward, easily crossing the line of exoskeleton armor. The distance between him and Luo Yuan grew closer and closer. Today you seem to be very happy to display the image of a frustrated and infatuated person in front of me. This isn't even as refreshing as last year's dimensional crossbow. Is it because I'm not so easy to kill now, so you might as well change your method? Are you preparing to disgust me to death? Luo Yuan's smile seemed to deepen a bit. You should be enduring the disgust and doing some unqualified but necessary things. Is this the rumored sociopath? Well, I'm not surprised. Luo Nan had already arrived at the edge of the caved-in area. The distance between him and Luo Yuan was no more than 3 meters. From his angle, he could already see the bumpy edges of the caved-in cavern wall, as well as the chaos at the bottom. Yes, there was also the remains of the lizard mutant that had just been possessed and transformed by Luo Yuan. Right now, only a few broken scales remained. This was also a clone body produced by Luo Yuan's laboratory. It had to be said that Luo Yuan's technological route was compatible with Luo Yuan's ability. Luo Nan had prepared ahead of time, and the results were almost the same as Luo Nan's spatial shift. Only the heavens knew how many similar chess pieces Luo Yuan had planted over the years. What level had the production capacity of his laboratory reached? If Luo Nan wanted to get rid of Luo Yuan cleanly and efficiently, he would need to find the unchanging behind the myriad of transformations. All of this happened in a flash of thought. Luo Nan and Luo Yuan looked face to face again, and their eyes carried a bit of killing intent. As for Luo Yuan, the thoughts of his kind had not changed at all. It was just that in this place, in this environment, and in this atmosphere, everyone was more restrained. That was all. Luo Nan was now a bit sociopath. The evidence was that he had begun to seriously consider having a chat with Luo Yuan. At the very least, he wanted to collect some first-hand information for future preparations. At this moment, the range, the frequency, and the way they interfered with the material plane represented the breadth, depth, and precision of their senses. Their respective senses would clash and interfere with each other, especially when there was Luo Nan, a perception freak that covered the entire region. The two of them didn't say anything, but their contact and probing on the level of perception never stopped. Luo Yuan senses Luo Yuan. Luo Yuan's Luin Nan, Luo Yuan's Luo Nan, Luin, Nan, Luo, Luo, and Luo Yuan's Nan. Nan. Luo Yuan Nan. But Luo Yuan Nan. Nan. Luo Yuan's Luo Yuan had long ago, Luo Nan didn't do this on purpose. He spent most of his energy observing the external environment. He observed the special area where his mother lived and eventually died. However, Luo Yuan's power circulation pattern was too unique. The parasitic clone before his eyes didn't count for anything. It was connected to Luo Yuan. It was in existence like a relay satellite that was outside of the local space-time environment. It was constantly moving in the dark side of space-time. It was far too eye-catching. Its mode of existence and position were very vague. It was separated from the local spacetime by the fragmented isolation belt and the deep and distant polar domain. It was its natural cover. But Luo Nan could see it. He could see it more clearly than last year when he was hit by the dimensional crossbow. This was without a doubt the problem Luo Nan had pointed out through the mouth of the horned demon back in Format 70 laboratory. The most valuable thing Luo Yuan, a former laboratory member, obtained in the misty labyrinth was very likely a large fragment. It was hidden in the depths of the endless misty labyrinth like a sandstorm. It followed Luo Yuan's will and maintained a close yet distant connection with the local spacetime of Earth. What Luo Nan was able to see was basically this. There didn't seem to be any substantial breakthroughs compared to before. But the most important thing was the details. Conclusive details. I can't calculate the spatial structure distribution of the distorted fragment from 2 points and 1 line right now. But if I have a few more examples. 10. Maybe even fewer. The premise is that the trajectory isn't too complicated. Luo Nan felt that Luo Yuan would regret it in the future. Or it could be said that he would help Luo Yuan regret. Luo Yuan regretted carelessly exposing the connection between the parasitic clone and the plane of existence before him. The problem was, how did Luo Yuan know what level Luo Nan's current sensing mode was at? Even Luo Nan himself was still working hard to adapt. He was adapting to this wide area sensing mode based on the magnetic mica. Ever since he successfully cultivated the first magnetic light on the jadeite light and planted the true seed, the true meaning of the magnetic mica began to grow without interruption. Nearly a month's time was enough for the larval form of the magnetic mica to expand once more. This wasn't just a simple expansion into outer space. It also included the local spacetime environment of Earth and the continuous infiltration of all neighboring planes. The situation in the deep blue world was a bit special. There was no obvious progress for the time being. But in the cloud world and even in the extremely broken environment of the misty labyrinth, the magnetic mica's sensitivity and activity continued to increase. Currently, the only thing that limited Luo Nan's perceptual ability was the structure of his brain. Luo Nan was immortal in the end. His brain was wet inside his skull, and it wasn't like a multi-core supercomputer. It was impossible for him to casually absorb the incalculable flow of information on the level of a trillion at all times. There were even more chaotic and even unstructured data fragments. So he used the magnetic mica's sensing nature to synthesize distance, danger, focus, and many other conditions to comb and build a new sensing network. The magnetic mica's material foundation was already infinitely close to the microscopic level, and the carrier structure was hard to grasp. Luo Nan's overall ability to observe information on the macroscopic level had yet to recover to the peak state of the water vapor cloak. But the coverage of his sensing domain, his grasp of key information, his sensitivity to danger, and even the efficiency of his instantaneous interference were far greater than before. There was no need to even mention his future potential. Time is on my side. Luo Nan lowered his head, temporarily burying his killing intent against Luo Yuan. This wasn't forbearance. This was planning. His thoughts had completely returned to the plane of reality, but it was unavoidable for him to link up with the past. There was frequent interference on the sensing plane. Ever since they entered the collapsed hole, the two hadn't spoken to each other. From this point of view, Luo Yuan couldn't be considered a qualified commentator, but Luo Nan didn't mind. The longer he stayed in this dark space, the more information his multidimensional perception could absorb and reorganize. Especially in a situation where Luo Yuan had already pointed out the direction. Luo Nan's tentacles of perception touched the target and the space that held the target a step earlier than his body. Frankly speaking, that place wasn't quite the same as what Luo Nan had imagined. In any case, Luo Nan and Luo Yuan continued to tread on mycelium, moss, stagnant water, and the bones of small animals as they headed in that direction. They passed through collapsed or half-collapsed passageways, as well as empty and dilapidated doorways. Even if he used his unique polar domain perspective to observe, all he could see was the intertwining and disorderly trajectories of the power, as well as the energy clouds that stimulated each other. The muscles on Luo Yuan's cheeks twitched slightly. This time, he was grinding his teeth unconsciously. The more he used clairvoyance, the more he was able to confirm that this kid Luo Nan was mixed and blended together with the material world, the polar domain of the abyss, and the ever-changing sea of consciousness. Even if this fusion wasn't complete, even the word fusion wasn't accurate enough. This so-called fusion could only prove that Luo Nan possessed an extremely powerful interference force towards the domains mentioned above. Even though he wasn't doing anything right now, his very existence had set off undulating waves in many domains. His true existence was hidden beneath these waves that interweaved and influenced each other. No matter what angle one looked at it from, all one could see was an incomplete silhouette. Only by synthesizing different observation angles and refining them could one capture Luo Nan's tracks. But this wasn't an exact answer. For example, even if this youth's body was clearly and plainly placed before one's eyes, one could reach out and touch it. But if one wanted to deal a fatal blow to Luo Nan, one would not just need to pierce through the polluted air of the laboratory ruins. One would need to do so on every plane that Luo Nan could instantly interfere with. Even if the offensive power of the planar crossbow was unparalleled under the heavens, with Luo Nan's current wide-area interference ability, would Luo Nan still be standing there when the planar crossbow pierced through the multifaceted interference waves of the polar domain of the abyss, the mental plane, and the material plane? It must be known that Luo Nan was a bastard proficient in teleportation. The sound of Luo Yuan grinding his teeth was a bit too clear in the extremely quiet environment. Luo Nan, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly opened his mouth. If you want to target me, design an assassination plan or something. Just do some thought experiments. It's best if you don't blindly use the real thing. The real thing that Luo Nan spoke of was obviously the massive space-time fragment that the planar crossbow was entrusted to. Actually, Luo Nan's words could be interpreted the other way around. He hoped that Luo Yuan would be provoked and make a few more useless attempts. In this way, perhaps it wouldn't be long before Luo Nan could lock onto the location of the fragment and eliminate this hidden danger. Luo Yuan's eyes narrowed, but he didn't oppose Luo Nan with equal harshness. Instead, he maintained his silence. He noticed that the wide-area, multi-layered chaotic interference effect clearly retracted as Luo Nan opened his mouth. It seemed that Luo Nan was exerting his strength before, but now it had returned to normal. Or maybe he's giving you some pointers. Luo Nan raised his eyes and looked at Luo Yuan. A moment later, he shrugged. I roughly understand what's going on with you. People like you don't know how to live if they can't find their enemies. But what if they don't have any enemies? You can add drama to yourself, to others, or simply draw a target to torment. From beginning to end, the problem is, this world isn't what you think it is. What do you do? Luo Yuan laughed softly. You think you've seen through everything. You're quite similar to your grandfather right now. He used to be a lot more stylish. As he spoke, he took another step and disappeared into the darkness. Not long after, Luo Nan sensed the body and it silently transformed into a paste of flesh and blood. Hey, if you do this, I won't be able to explain it to Professor Wu. He might even think that I killed you here. Naturally, no one responded. Luo Nan turned around and faced the health pod once more. The smile on his face had already solidified there. It didn't change for a long time. Chapter 11:28. Ruiwen floated within the misty maze. The countless fine grains of sand in her surroundings continued to jump about. They didn't have a real trajectory, or perhaps they were just expanding and contracting, striking and repelling each other. These fragmented grains of sand inherited the initial force they received when they were torn apart from their relatively intact state. They also received the effects of countless forces that were of the same or close to the same source, resulting in astonishing complexity. Moreover, the local spacetime of Earth was infected with the support and interference of another set of construction rules. This complexity increased by an order of magnitude, and it continued to grow. There were no rules inherent to ordinary spacetime here. But fragments of similar rules interweaved with each other from time to time, transforming into countless possibilities. There was a peculiar beauty to the process of possibility, its germination and continuation. It was like the continuous spraying of paint on a canvas where not a bit of white could be seen. The flowers that bloomed and withered, constructed by countless coincidences, blossomed and withered in an instant. Of course, actual flowers didn't exist. Only people who truly possessed the corresponding talent and ability were able to glimpse the beautiful and splendid law of possibility. And if one wanted to find and lock onto the most valuable flower within these flowers that bloomed and withered in an instant, then conduct deeper research, not only did one need to possess an extremely strong observational ability, one also needed to have persevering patience, some interference abilities, and even the ability to control oneself. Only then would one's body and mind not be assimilated within this unique and endlessly flowing sea of flowers. Sometimes Ruiwen would find it strenuous, but she would quickly get used to it. This was Ruiwen's method of perception. Ruiwen had been adapting to her own abilities ever since she had awakened through the altar frame that Luo Nan had created. After all, the speed at which her abilities expanded was astonishing. Her extraordinary power had continued to strengthen in the following months, including her long slumber. Moreover, there didn't seem to be a clear barrier or upper limit. Actually, she wasn't too clear on the nature of her own abilities. She didn't know whether or not she was making reasonable use of them. However, it was precisely under the influence of this ability that she had a unique vexation. Ruiwen hadn't mentioned this to anyone. In fact, she wasn't too sure herself, but she seemed to prefer staying within the misty maze up until now. At the very least, this place was still in the midst of continuous changes. In the outside world, in a space-time environment where the basic flow was limited, no matter how brilliant the colors were, they would wither in an extremely short period of time. No matter how complicated the branches were, they would also be erased in the end. What appeared in front of her was only a gray and silent river. Perhaps it would change its direction and shape from time to time, but no matter what, there was no end to it. Occasionally, a small number of shadows would struggle tenaciously in the river, swimming with her in the long river. Then, they would be extinguished and assimilated. As her abilities continued to grow, the colors withered and disappeared faster and faster, and the process of entering a state of deathly stillness also became shorter and shorter. But no matter what, the final result would be the deathly stillness of the ashes, the silent flowing but unfathomable chaos. She instinctively disliked the situation and had tried to interfere. She seemed to be able to make the people around her stay in the river for a longer time, but it was only an instant before everything returned to silence. In comparison, there were a few who did not need her interference. They struggled in the river of time and continued to exist for a longer time. Tenacious light and shadow would inevitably make her look at him in a new light. There was no doubt that Luo Nan was an extremely special one among the extremely small number of tenacious light and shadow. Ruiwen was unable to see through the shadow he extended out to this day, and he had always drawn strength from it to strengthen himself, realizing rapid expansion. So much so that Luo Nan was often the one who traveled with her the longest in the long and dark river of constantly changing silhouettes and directions, even if he was warped and deformed many times, becoming unrecognizable. But it wasn't just this. Actually, Ruiwen didn't need to find any reason. She just needed to see the result that appeared in the long and dark river of time. As long as the final shadow was Luo Nan, she would always feel a bit of comfort before entering the ultimate solitude. It should be even further, even further, even further. At this very moment, Rui Wen's gaze pierced through the surrounding chaotic sea of flowers, to gradually lock onto Luo Nan's location. Due to Luo Nan's special position in the structure of her perception, as well as his extraordinary sense of existence in the long and deathly still river, finding Luo Nan was much easier than locking onto any other target in the world. Soon, Rui Wen confirmed that point. At the same time, she utilized the unrealized possibilities of the misty maze to draw a rough path ahead of time. Then she used a certain amount of interference power to erect a tunnel that led directly to that point. In the next second, Rui Wen was floating on the long and withered river of countless blooming lights. She flowed downstream, and when she came to a stop, Luo Nan was right before her eyes. Just a bit off. Luo Nan and Rui Wen locked gazes at each other in this moment. Luo Nan's pupils slightly narrowed, and his gaze focused on Rui Wen's body. After a moment of astonishment, he laughed and waved his hand at Rui Wen. The two were close at hand, but there was a transparent glass-like barrier between them. From a specific spatial meaning, Luo Nan was inside and Rui Wen was outside. Oh my! I really shouldn't have chased away the true God and the others. Otherwise, just based on what happened just now, it would be the tempo of a horror movie. In the end, Rui Wen smoothly teleported inside. Her eyes drooped as she listened to Luo Nan's teasing. This was the 70-format laboratory. Luo Nan had just seized it back not too long ago. It was one of the most important assets and results of the Luo family. Every inch of the space that housed the laboratory was designed and constructed by Bo Qingwen back in the day. Bo Qingwen had used local materials and domain fragments to reassemble the laboratory. Though it didn't have the support of supernatural powers, it was still able to exist for a long time within the misty maze that didn't possess the complete laws and structure of spacetime. Just this alone was considered an outstanding construction work even when compared to the heavenly Yuan Empire's configuration level, let alone on Earth. Luo Nan came here after leaving the 100 Races laboratory. This was outside of his plans, so the timing wasn't easy to grasp. Rui Wen came over to remind him not to forget to go home and eat. I remember. I remember. Luo Nan responded unhurriedly. Rui Wen looked at him. She kept flipping through the old notebook in her hands. Luo Nan had a lot of these things in his hands right now. Most of them were from the batch he had traded with the Horned Demons last time. These were all Luo Yuandao's many years of records and experiences. There was a lot of information, and he was still in the process of sorting them out. But recently, he had been carrying the notebook he had personally retrieved from the jadeite light by his side. There was very little meaningful information on it. Most of it was a jumbled mess of lines that seemed to be dreamwalking. But these lines themselves contained. At the very least, they drew in a special power. Rui Wen swept her gaze over the seemingly meaningless lines on the page. Then she cast her gaze towards the endless sandstorm outside. I ran into Luo Yuan today. Yeah, you haven't really interacted with him. That fellow is quite troublesome. Of course he's even more annoying. Luo Nan habitually engaged in a one-sided chat with Rui Wen. He described today's encounter and poured out his thoughts. That fellow is annoying. His stomach is filled with a pile of secrets. It's going to rot, but he's still very stingy. He talks halfway, and then he thinks of pricing. No, he's just trying to disgust me. Rui Wen withdrew her gaze from the outside world and stared quietly at Luo Nan. But the words he said today had a very strong purpose. He revealed some intentions of wanting to cooperate. But what kind of cooperation can I have with him? A Miss Labyrinth? Or genetic engineering? The former is more likely, but he should know that I won't spit on this matter. Luo Nan's hands continued to flip through the pages, but the corner of his lips gradually froze. Speaking of which, why do I feel like he's threatening me? He mentioned my grandfather. Speaking of which, the arrangements at the nursing center really can't block the planar crossbow. It'll be hard for me to react in time. Sure enough, it's safest to get rid of such a highly dangerous fellow in time. Ruewen tilted her head slightly. Do we make our move now? Girls shouldn't easily shout about fighting and killing. Luo Nan rubbed Ruewen's head again. Ruewen lowered her head and let his palm fall on the warm crown of her head. Actually, there's one thing that I'm quite mindful of. Luo Nan was silent for a moment. Then he suddenly asked for her opinion. Oh, Ruewen. What's your first reaction when you hear this? He's still guiding you. Ruewen thought seriously. Someone's teaching me. That person. Which one? It doesn't matter which one it is. Let's pick at the words. Both of them say, still. This proves that this person has been maintaining contact with me all this time, right? This was how Ruewen understood it, so she nodded. Then she saw that Luo Nan was looking at her. His eyes were bright and dark, and the hand pressing down on her head unconsciously increased in strength. Is Luo Yuan just saying this casually, or is he probing something? Is Luo Yuan suspicious, or is someone else suspicious? Is he grasping a clue that I don't know of? There are too many things I don't know. Ruewen didn't quite understand the meaning of these words. She just knew that Luo Nan's heart was in turmoil right now. It was absolutely hard for him to calm down. His mouth chattered on and on without stopping for a moment. Though his guidance is completely wrong, Luo Yuan's words and his suspicions must have some other basis, right? If there really are some other clues in a certain corner of the world, then it proves that he's still active recently. Him. Ruewen keenly discovered that Luo Nan's target of reference had changed. Luo Nan's lips twitched. The him Luo Yuan is talking about. My father. Ha! Ruewen was a bit surprised. Luo Nan's speech sped up. That's right. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. If he's alive, not contacting me is his usual style. He should have his reasons. Just like back then. F***ck. Luo Nan smacked his forehead heavily with his hand as he spat out fragrant words. He simply pressed down without letting go. No. This won't do. I can't follow Luo Yuan's tempo. People shouldn't have too many unrealistic hopes. Am I right? Chapter 1129. At this time, Ruewen could clearly see how much willpower Luo Nan used in order to forcefully divert her attention from this matter. His words were tough, but he was clearly a bit absent-minded. Luo Yuan was not on the same level of importance as his biological father. Perhaps Ruewen's expression was too worried, but Luo Nan took a deep breath and revealed a smile to her. Don't worry. My mind is very clear. Judging a person's life and death under the premise of being missing all year round is a huge project. Wanting to obtain an answer in a short amount of time is the same as searching for evidence in one's imagination. How can there be any results? We need to start from a more realistic point of view when we get back. I know what to do. But as he spoke, he changed the topic again. Of course, Ruewen didn't remind him. She just listened quietly. Luo Nan's mouth grew more and more unstoppable. He used words to organize his thoughts and organize his emotions. You must know that my father's last message was left in the tree hole of the withered tree's sandbar. From the message, I can be sure that Li Wei and his henchmen were about to kill their way over. My father didn't have any time to move at that time. So, if something were to happen, it could only happen in Xia City and its surroundings. I just looked up some information. President Ouyang was already an extraordinary at that time. The psychic wave network was already in its embryonic form. Perhaps he could provide some information. Also, I believe that my father won't allow himself to be captured without putting up a fight. He will stir up some noise no matter what. The surveillance from that time. The possibility of this being left behind is too small. But even if there isn't, the extra traces created in order to erase the traces are also clues. I will sort through these matters. First, I will cast a wide net. Then I will find important people and links to make breakthroughs. I won't be like a headless fly bumping around randomly. I won't let my emotions and delusions fly. Luo Nan spoke clearly and logically. His train of thought was clear and definite, but Ruiwen still noticed that he was flipping the pages of the notebook in his hand. But Luo Nan finally succeeded in changing the topic to this point. Come. Let's consider the problem of Luo Yuan and the large-scale fragment he occupies. In a certain sense, he and we are neighbors. He relies on the key and password my parents gave him. I believe that even if he studied and explored the mist maze many years earlier than us, his understanding of it is still not as profound as ours. Otherwise, this world wouldn't be what it is right now. Ruiwen went, actually, she didn't quite understand. What was the difference between Luo Nan's this appearance and Luo Nan's that appearance? Would it make those mottled colors of life stay a little longer? Luo Nan chattered a few words. His mood seemed to have completely calmed down, and his tone became even more resolute. We definitely know more than Luo Yuan. If he wanted to pry into the core area, it would be very difficult to accurately aim without the external neuron. Without the soul cloak and the altar spider web, he would not be able to withstand the impact of the torrent of information from the other side. He would not even have Luo Yuan. There's also the tree hole, the lens, and of course, you, Ruiwen. That's right. Because of you, not only did we understand the basic structure of the mist maze, but we also gained a preliminary understanding of its changes. If the core area really is as dangerous as we've observed, then I don't believe that Luo Yuan can occupy a sufficiently weighty base there. Therefore, his fragment can only be in the periphery. Luo Nan made an even clearer judgment. According to our observations, the fragments outside the core area are mostly fragmented, but we can't rule out exceptions. Perhaps they were bounced out due to some sort of impact or disturbance in the core area in the past. It's just like the fragments with potential that you predicted. The periphery fragment is quite concealed, and it can be manipulated by Luo Yuan. Its corresponding nature might be that it possesses considerable mobility. Extrapolating from the situation of the planar crossbow firing, this is a possibility. It's like a spaceship traveling through the mist maze. Yes, it's a large tree-hole space. Of course, it might be much more complex and complete. Luo Nan didn't even need to make inferences about what sort of use of fragment drifting outside the core area could achieve. Ruiwen could find dozens to hundreds of functions, and all of them were quite threatening. Luo Nan muttered to himself, I don't know if Luo Yuan possesses the knowledge to fully utilize the domain fragment's configuration, but it's never wrong to be a bit careful. If we build a pseudoplane in the future, we should start construction near the core area. It's relatively safe. Only then can the possibility of leakage be reduced to a minimum. We can kill it first. Ruiwen emphasized this opinion once more. From her perspective, this was already a very insistent attitude. Luo Nan waved his hand. I really want to kill it right now, but this isn't a question of whether I want to or not. There are all sorts of troublesome matters right now. It's not worth it to take the initiative to waste a large amount of energy for the sake of a character whose standpoint isn't particularly clear. And with the concealment of the fragment's influence, killing it in local spacetime might not be a fatal blow. Even you, Ruiwen, would find it difficult to find that fellow in the misty maze. Am I right? Indeed, locking onto a target in a short period of time within the boundless and chaotic misty maze might be even more difficult than exploring the core area. However, she could work hard to do it. This was the most proactive and safest method. Even without mentioning the threat to the project, just the planar crossbow alone was one of the methods that could threaten Luo Nan's life the most. And in some special circumstances, the threat would be magnified by 10 times, 100 times. Luo Nan didn't know of Rui Wen's worries. He just followed his own train of thought upwards, so right now, we're still waiting for that person to make a move. It doesn't matter if he makes a move against me, or if he makes a move against someone else. Every time he makes a move, information will be exposed. Once, twice, 3 times, 5 times. When that time comes, the difficulty of finding him will drop by several levels. What if he doesn't make a move from beginning to end? If he doesn't make a move, then he doesn't pose a threat. Why do we need to waste energy to kill him? Luo Nan felt himself to be extremely calm as he spoke to this point. His calm mind was even more active. He didn't just rely on passively taking a beating to find his train of thought. Thanks to you, Rui Wen, we have a partial understanding of the environment and changing trends of the Misty Maze. We have a better direction in our detection. Detection has always been our daily routine. Since this is the case, we should put this problem into our daily work to deal with. Luo Nan flipped through his notes, his train of thought becoming clearer and clearer. Since I have some memories and knowledge of the nature of the planar crossbow, as well as today's harvest, I might as well organize them a step further. I'll find a few key points to use as reference. Reference? Rui Wen was puzzled. What I'm saying is that we should write a program for these characteristics. We should also install a plug-in for the tree hole and the lens. We should pay attention to gathering information in this aspect when we scan the Misty Maze. We can organize and analyze them later. It would be best if we can find a few high-priority suspicious points to compress his activity space. We should do our work in advance. It would be best if we can accomplish this. It's fine if he doesn't make a move, but if he does make a move, then don't give him the chance to make a move. Rui Wen thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. Luo Nan closed his notebook. Okay, let's go to the tree hole space. Let's ponder over how to extract the information from that fragment. Oh, but... Rui Wen wanted to remind Luo Nan that it wasn't long until dinner time. But Luo Nan's mood clearly took a turn for the better at this time. Perhaps he was deliberately trying to mobilize her, even taking the initiative to propose. Come, Rui Wen. Let's have a race. Let's see who gets there first. Okay. I'll count. 3, 2, begin. Luo Nan's figure instantly disappeared. This was obviously a spatial shift, but he was unable to be like Rui Wen in the chaotic environment of the Misty Maze. It was impossible for him to be like Rui Wen and directly perform a resonance shuttle. The safest route was to first jump to the local spacetime. Then, he would use the Luo clan sandwich domain to perform a second jump. There was an extra step in the chain. It was clear that there was no chance of victory. Rui Wen even had the leisure to sigh. She erected a bridge amidst the gorgeous sea of flowers. Her body and soul blended together as she teleported in an instant. Luo Nan flashed inside a second after Rui Wen stepped into the gray and white monotonous tree hole space. Oh my. You lost again. Yep. What do you want? Big brother will buy it for you. Rui Wen finally had the chance to say those words. You said you were eating dinner at home. Ah. Is it time yet? Luo Nan looked at his watch, then he laughed. Not yet. There's still a bit of time. Let's first see if we can make an embryonic form of the plug-in. Then it would really be a bit too much. Rui Wen was able to see the foreordained future. Right now, Luo Nan had finally succeeded in stirring up his emotions. He spoke faster. Aside from this plug-in, I still need to properly research another. Look. Rui Wen. This. Luo Nan drew in the air in the manner of presenting a treasure. The trajectory appeared to be chaotic, but Ruewen was able to recognize that this should be a fragment of a configuration. However, its evolutionary trend would always be interrupted at inappropriate times. Clearly, its function wasn't perfect, but it seemed that there was an external interface. She couldn't make out any more information. She could only cast her gaze over and wait for Luo Nan's explanation. This is my big discovery today. It's in that health pod. According to what Luo Yuan said, this was left behind by my mother. I feel that he wouldn't lie about this sort of matter. Luo Nan drew this fragment once more. You should be able to see that this is a kind of configuration. It's incomplete, but it's the kind of incomplete that comes after being split apart. It should be used in some sort of relatively complete configuration system. Let's go with this for the time being. Ruewen tilted her head slightly. It has a specific use. That's exactly what I mean. Luo Nan turned around and walked inside the tree hole. He spoke as he walked. I'm not sure for now, but I have a premonition that the message my mother left behind in this manner should be highly related to the research of the laboratory back then. Wasn't the tree hole one of the key points of their research back then? The 70-format laboratory, the pincer-shaped corridors, one on each side, all of them in the form of tree holes. The husband and wife also cooperated and competed. There's nothing more suitable than this. This is what Luo Yuan told me. Luo Nan spoke of the secret information he had heard in the 70-format laboratory back then with the soul-fostering horn demon. Ruewen wasn't too clear on this. She just followed silently. The two soon arrived at the core region of the second floor of the tree hole. They arrived before the star atlas of the mist labyrinth displayed by the lens. Luo Nan didn't look at the star atlas. He just walked in circles around them. He even extended his hand to touch the inner wall of the special material and structure. I went to the remains of the tree holes on both sides of the corridors when I was in the laboratory. The damage was probably too severe, so I didn't discover them. However, if they really are related to the tree holes, believe it or not, my old man will certainly use them in the subsequent designs. Ruewen. So, I'm going to flip through the blueprints my old man left behind to see if there's a similar structure. Of course, there might be some deformations. Ruewen thought for a bit. It'll take a lot of time. Yeah. Considering the factor of the deformations in the subsequent designs, I'll need to comb through everything anew. I'll need a bit more time. Why do I feel like everything is piled up together? Oh, now that I think about it, Luo Yuan taking the initiative to jump out has stirred the situation more and more complicated. This bunch of bastards. They can't be thinking of using fatigue tactics right. Reality seemed to want to nail Luo Nan's judgment to the wall. He was destined to have a life of toil in recent times. It wasn't even until the morning of the next day. In the wee hours of the morning, Ruewen was still in her own room, earnestly researching the future trends of the mist labyrinth. She was trying to find even more definite and valuable information within that splendid sea of flowers. Mo Peng, who lived downstairs, tiptoed up the stairs at this time to knock on Luo Nan's door. This action of his could not be hidden from anyone at all. Ruewen was completely able to hear the true purpose of Mo Peng's visit in the middle of the night. Dang 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 dang. The 10 Days in the Wilderness expansion has been released. New plot, new system, new characters. Nanster, you said you'd take me flying. Perhaps from Mo Peng's perspective, this action of his was to help Luo Nan release the pressure. Ruewen's foresight ability did not include the complex domain of social communication, so she was unable to comment. But in reality, it didn't take long for Ruewen to hear Luo Nan's long sigh from within the room. Luo Nan's friend group on the psychic wave network was suddenly flooded with large amounts of information at nearly the same time. The hexier vibrated, and all sorts of notification sounds rang out in the air. Ruewen was able to sort out the general thread of information very quickly, even though everyone's words were a bit emotional. Among the pile of information, 10 Days in the Wilderness hardcore fan Bamboo Pole's ridicule was the most representative. I didn't know that the brains of the game's designers and planners were deformed. It wasn't my fault. But when I saw the evolved skill tree, I didn't uninstall it. I even clicked on it. I watched helplessly as their brains spat shit out of their holes. It splashed all over my face. This is simply the stupidest thing I've ever done in my entire life. Bamboo Pole's words were summarized in a single sentence. 10 Days in the Wilderness, this multi-platform game that had just undergone a new version update, had a demonic moth appear. Chapter 1130. Time flew by amidst the sudden outbreak of chaos. In the blink of an eye, it was morning again. Monday mornings were always particularly busy. Many people needed to regain their rhythm. Ruiwen sat at the dining table for almost 5 minutes before Mo Peng, with a pair of panda eyes, yawned and sat next to her under Madame Luo Shuqing's kind care. His already round face was obviously swollen. When he looked at the neatly arranged plates and the dishes that were even more orderly and soulless, he suddenly lost his spirit. He slumped on the table and groaned. "Why, old Mo? Where's my father? I urgently need a high-sugar, high-fat, high-protein diet." Madame Luo Shuqing replied with a smile, "Your father only slept 3 more hours than you did. He left home at 4 in the morning and is now working to support the family. Unlike a certain someone who wastes his time, money, and life," Mo Ping tried to cover his ears with the table, but he could only block one side. Caught overnight. Moya, who had to eat diet meals frequently due to the limitations of her industry, had a certain tolerance for the old Mo's environmentally friendly cuisine of the household artificial intelligence, especially when there was someone to gloat over. "I'm the victim." Mo Ping hit the table with half his face, but he said weakly, "I really didn't want to stay overnight. It was Nanster who grabbed me and cleared the expansion in one night. He's biting the hand that feeds him." This kind of game should be slowly tasted and familiarized with the characters and data bit by bit. There's no experience in forcefully clearing the game. Moya raised her eyebrows. What a surprisingly good reason to indulge. "If I let myself go, I'll fall asleep in his bed, okay? I won't be forced to clear the game by him and not even get a thank you in the end. Oh, how pitiful. It looks like I pulled you down too early." As Mo Peng's mother, Madame Luo Shuqing still knew her son. She didn't really think of her son as a hopeless degenerate. She was just puzzled. Nan isn't addicted to games. He's not playing games. Mo Peng had no appetite and only wanted to express himself. Who plays games in the work area, takes notes, checks data, and holds conference calls? He's not even that serious when writing a thesis. 10 Days in the Wilderness. If I touch it again in 10 days, I'll chop off my hand. Sure, I'll buy some pork trotters for you in advance. Moya saw through Mo Peng's words with a glance. Then, she turned her gaze to the other side. 10 Days in the Wilderness. Ruiwen, did you know? What happened? Ruiwen thought it over very seriously, but it was truly rather difficult to describe the situation in concise terms. The sound of hurried footsteps rang out at this time. Luo Nan scuttled down the stairs. He didn't even stop by the dining table. He just hurried over and said, "I'm going out." Luo Shuqing raised her voice. "You're not eating. There's a meeting over there. Let's all go together. We won't starve." With that, he disappeared. Around the table, apart from Ruiwen, the other 3 were all sighing, although their hearts were subtly different. Moya continued asking, "Is there a problem with the new expansion pack?" Ruiwen recalled the information she had received last night and nodded silently. As for what the problem was, she still couldn't say for the time being. Moya kicked her brother with her long legs. Hey, you've been playing all night. Other than the dark circles under your eyes, don't you have any useful information? I do have information, but I don't dare to ask if it's correct or not. Mo Ping grunted twice, but he still struggled to get up under the gazes of his mother and sister. He did his best to recall. First of all, it's definitely the game's settings. The new expansion pack released an entire series of heroes, as well as the corresponding evolutionary tree. It's related to controllable mutant new humans. This smell is a bit off when I carefully touch it. Breakfast had turned into a seminar at the last minute. Undoubtedly, it greatly affected the proper schedule. But of course, it was impossible to come up with an effective judgment and opinion in this sort of environment, let alone a feasible plan. In the end, everyone could only go to work and school. Today, it was Mo Ya's turn to send Ruiwen to school. Monday's especially congested traffic made it impossible to have a lightning-fast experience, even if one sat in Mo Ya's red supercar. From Ruiwen's perspective, this was undoubtedly an extremely inefficient action. But it was also an effort to extend the vividness of color. She didn't have any clear thoughts of rejecting color itself. But by choosing this method, the time spent researching the misty labyrinth and chaotic sea of flowers would inevitably be allocated to the city's traffic layer and the high-rise skyscrapers. It would be equally chaotic, but it would quickly turn gray matter and turn chaotic in the real world. Ruiwen knew that what she saw was only the current conditions and the foundation of the known information. It was a process of rolling forward all the way to the end. In theory, every second would change, and every second could bring about entirely different results. But the reality was that the trend would never change even after watching 1,000 times. As for the details, those fleeting details were admittedly brilliant purple and brilliant red. But if one truly studied them in earnest, one would inevitably have a sort of a meaningless doubt or self-awareness. Well, Ruiwen wasn't too clear on what meaning was. But she had lived by Luo Nan's side for a long time. She had experienced the troubles that plagued Luo Nan at all times. It was as if an invisible whip was lashing him forward. She couldn't help but feel that wasting time like this was definitely wrong. The problem was that Luo Nan himself was currently in the same situation. From Ruiwen's point of view, Luo Nan had similarly invested his limited energy into the details of the endless appearance, the branching, and the rapid decay into chaos. Perhaps this wasn't his original intention, but in this complex and confusing real world, there would always be factors like this and that would affect him. For example, the sudden game expansion pack event. Actually, Ruiwen didn't really understand why Luo Nan cared so much about this matter. She couldn't judge whether or not Luo Nan's methods were correct. This was because she couldn't eliminate the possibility of the tributary eventually becoming the mainstream, even though it would ultimately return to deathly stillness. Ruiwen was confused, but the only target she was willing to use as a reference in most situations was Luo Nan. She hoped to be able to understand and imitate this pattern. Perhaps this would help her create a greater separation from the long river of deathly stillness. She wouldn't fuse with it too early and sink into the endless chaos. Ruiwen instinctively didn't wish for this to happen, even though she couldn't find a clear dividing line right now. She couldn't tell if she was detached from the outside or if she herself was a part of this long river of deathly stillness. Was she observing the final destination of all things, or was it the occasional surging waves of the river intertwining with the real world and separating from it? Ruiwen looked out the window, but she saw her own reflection in the glass. In the environment where the light inside and outside collided and flowed, and in the blurry mirror carrier, the image on it seemed to be wriggling and changing, as if it would peel off the shell at any time and jump out of it completely different. Her fingers touched the window as well as the shadow. The point of contact was slightly cold, just like the water vapor of the long, dead river, gently biting her fingertips. However, was she above or below the water? Aside from Luo Nan, Mo Ya was the person in the family who was the most familiar with Ruiwen. It was also because they were familiar with each other that they didn't intentionally disturb each other in this silent atmosphere. Most of the time, it was quiet in the car. Moya was also handling some of her own affairs during the autopilot period. She only spoke when they were about to reach the school. Look at how flustered Luo Nan has been these past few days. Don't add to his troubles in other areas. Ruewen looked away from her own mirror and turned to look at her. I'm talking about those messy matters on the internet. Cut them off when it's time. I'll talk to the company and BHD. If you run into those paparazzi or gossipy women at school, hide if you can. Strive to cool things down in these 2 days. Ruewen pondered seriously for a moment. I'll just skip class. Then am I an accomplice or the main culprit? Ruewen still lacked this sort of sensitivity. She didn't respond at all to Moya's teasing. Her eyes drooped in silence, but her mind began to plan the goal of today's exploration. Moya rolled her eyes. In the end, she didn't say anything. The car smoothly arrived at the school 5 minutes later. Sure enough, Ruewen didn't go to the main campus after saying goodbye to Moya. She directly boarded the self-moving conveyor belt and headed in the direction of the Northern Shore jungle. Actually, Ruewen wanted to directly teleport to Gear's underground laboratory. However, she had truly become famous during this period of time. There were people staring at her practically every second she walked on campus. It was extremely difficult to find a suitable visual and psychological blind spot in this sort of environment. She could only spend a bit more time like a normal student. She transferred from the self-moving conveyor belt to the school's tram until she reached the outskirts of the Northern Shore jungle. But at this time, a normal student's direction of activity was certainly the opposite of hers. Ruewen ignored the strange gazes she received along the way. She prepared to enter deep into the jungle and directly jumped to the laboratory when the time came. A loudspeaker sounded from behind her at this time. Hey, Luo Xiang. Junior sister Ruewen. The person in front of her first said Ruewen's registered name at school, but he felt that it was too unfamiliar. He imitated Luo Nan's usual way of addressing her, using a more intimate form of address. The problem was that Ruewen didn't turn her head at all. It was as if she didn't hear his greeting at all. She directly walked across the long river that cut through the forest, connecting the southern shore and the northern shore with the Nine-Bend Bridge. The person behind her jumped off the sightseeing car and hurried 2 steps forward. His mouth didn't stop. Do you recognize me? I'm Au Quebec. We've met before. Ruewen didn't remember. She continued to walk forward, and the fellow called OK kept up with her. He chattered endlessly next to her ear. Ruewen, aren't you going to class at this time? Even though your behavior isn't too good, it's quite interesting when you do it. One of the most valuable things about the mystic arts is that it's interesting. Plus, you're quite mysterious. Ruewen followed Moya's teachings and maintained silence in front of the gossipy woman. But OK didn't have the slightest intention of restraining himself. You want to go to Gear? Have you eaten breakfast yet? The water chestnut cakes here are surprisingly authentic. I'll treat you. Oh my. OK subconsciously cried out. The reason was because he had just crossed the Nine-Bend Bridge and stepped onto the northern shore paved with gravel and grass. There was a brown shadow that passed through the morning grass and trees that were still a bit damp. The brown shadow pierced out from the side and charged straight at him. OK nearly kicked it out. Luckily, he was able to see clearly who it was in the end. He staggered and stopped, but the fat and round fellow took over his position. He was no longer able to walk side by side with Ruewen. The fellow that leapt out clearly occupied a good position, but he didn't dare to rub against Ruewen's body. He just excitedly spun in circles beneath her feet. His long tail whipped against the mud, rocks, and grass, making popping sounds. This was, without a doubt, Jerry. OK often saw him in the society. He knew that he was Xia Junping's adopted son, one of the group favorites in Luo Nan's circle of friends. He would drill in and out of the bosom of Luo Nan's extremely beautiful friends of the opposite sex, including Rui Wen. But what OK didn't know was that this little thing looked like a common muskrat in the jungle swamp area. In fact, it had a mysterious and complicated history. From what he knew so far, it had once undergone precise modifications by Luo Zhongheng. It had stored a large amount of critical information. Normally, it would do some cleaning work in the tree hole of the withered tree sandbar. It could be said that it was precisely because of Jerry's existence that the letter Luo Zhongheng left for Luo Nan, the building structure of the tree hole, and other information were perfectly preserved. Ever since that matter, this muskrat's position in Luo Nan's heart had changed. But Rui Wen, who was the first to introduce Jerry to Luo Nan, still had the same attitude towards this little thing. She didn't stop walking, and Jerry followed by her side in a well-behaved manner. Its fat body achieved a perfect blocking position within the narrow jungle path. It made it impossible for OK to walk side by side with Rui Wen no matter what. OK could only fall behind by a body's length. He raised his voice and did his best to strike up a conversation with Rui Wen, speaking of which, you're not wasting your energy on your schoolwork. Are you really preparing to debut? Even though Mingtang culture's hype isn't that brilliant, I still believe in you. A girl with such boldness like yours will succeed in any field. In the entertainment circle, more people will be able to see and appreciate your beauty. That kind of boldness and mysterious beauty. When the time comes, I'll definitely be a fan of you. Yep. Actually, I'm a fan right now. OK didn't hesitate to use overflowing words of praise. He clearly expressed his family's attitude, but Rui Wen still didn't pay attention to him. OK furrowed his brows a bit, but he soon calmed down. This was how cool it was. Only a girl could enter his discerning eyes, right? Just like this, the two of them arrived at Gear. There weren't many people in Gear at this time. Some of them were freaks who were doing some inexplicable mysticism experiments and had forgotten the time. They simply stayed the night here. There were also some fellows who felt that the coffee and pastries here were delicious. They came to freeload for breakfast and enjoy the club's benefits. At times like this, bringing a female companion or something was the best atmosphere. But no matter which type it was, they weren't the same type as those little fellows from the South Bank who were in a hurry. Freedom to use their time freely and leisurely enjoy life was a right that only the seniors of the university department had. At this side of the entrance hall, the club's famous gossip lord Chao Shenhai belonged to the category of freeloading for breakfast and picking up girls. In the crook of his arm hung a pretty junior sister. At times like this, encountering an acquaintance was a sure way to show off. Chao Shenhai was in the elevator lobby on the first floor. He pulled over a few friends and discussed going to the casual booth to drink coffee and chat. At this time, he saw Rui Wen and OK walk in. Here, Rui Wen's direction was correct. Her age was even more out of place. Not to mention, she had the club's vice president by her side. Holy crap. Chao Shenhai's eyelids twitched a few times when he saw Rui Wen. He subconsciously averted his gaze and couldn't help but think of Rui Wen's older brother, Luo Nan, who had given him several months of nightmares. At the end of last year, he had suffered quite a few losses at Luo Nan's hands because of his big mouth. Especially at the grand banquet. Tears and snot streamed down his face as he sat on the ground and begged for mercy. He even sold out his old friend Huang Bingjun in passing. It could be said that he had lost all face. He certainly hated Luo Nan from the bottom of his heart, but as for revenge, screw it. Back then, Luo Nan's assistant, dragging him by the neck on the ground, had the rank of captain. Not to mention that after the incident, he and the elders of his family had been specially taken care of by the big shots. Revenge against a fellow with this kind of background. What was he going to do with his head? Chao Shanhai's momentum was seized, but his mouth was always ahead of his brain. He bypassed Rui Wen and said something else. OK's taste changes quite quickly. Everyone in the circle of the Divine Research Society knew that Vice President OK was a standard age control. Whether it was the president, Tang Yi, or the beautiful agent, Fei Jin, who had taken a leave of absence from school due to illness, they were all his favorites. And this young man, who still had some time left in his freshman career, had never denied this point. He constantly used his status and resources as vice president to create opportunities for himself and create public opinion. The results were not to be discussed, but this persona was established. But today's scene, the circle of people looked at Quebec. He had already entered the elevator with Rui Wen, but he retreated with his hands raised when the alarm went off. This elevator was installed later on. It directly connected to Luo Nan's underground laboratory. OK really didn't have the authority. In comparison, the muskrat wagging its head and wagging its tail was more impressive than Quebec. The people standing here with Chao Shanhai were all people of the same circle. They all more or less had some family privileges. But it was hard for them to not feel a bit sour when they saw this scene. There was also a person who had a good relationship with Quebec. He teased him from afar. Vice President have you taken a fancy to this person, or have you taken a fancy to this person's sister or aunt? You should greet everyone in advance. OK turned around. He wasn't angry at all. His doll-like face was full of smiles as he shook his head. Ambition doesn't depend on age. Boldness. Boldness. Do you guys understand? You guys haven't seen Rui Wen's video? The one that came out of the elevator. That expression in her eyes wasn't an act. It wasn't an act. It was completely natural. Her charm was limitless. In comparison, she OK spoke to this point and saw that there were girls here. He chuckled and bypassed the comparison. He rubbed his hands. Besides, my emotions are very pure. I've decided to start as a fan. I'll first establish a support group and a club. I'll watch Rui Wen grow up step by step. The few men who were familiar with OK were obviously still laughing and joking when they saw him like this. The junior sister who was holding Chao Shanhai's arm had just figured out the situation. She asked quietly, "That's the demon eye girl?" "Yeah. You don't know." The junior sister curled her lips. "She's not a big star. Does everyone have to remember her?" Chao Shanhai smelled jealousy. He grinned and elbowed her lightly. Yes. She's definitely not as big as you." The junior sister patted his shoulder reproachfully. She then recalled Rui Wen's slender and straight figure and laughed out loud. She moved closer to Chao Shanhai's ear and said, "Fortunately, she's wearing a dress. But it shouldn't be bad to change it. Are you sure you didn't get the wrong gender? This kind of thing is very popular now." Chao Shanhai rolled his eyes and slapped the junior sister to make her shut up. He didn't want to offend OK because of a woman's jealousy. Most importantly, he absolutely couldn't offend Rui Wen and the person behind her. The problem was that his attitude wasn't firm enough. The junior sister's train of thought was a little off. "That's right. Look at this. Luna just changed the desktop. Isn't it super cool? But I heard it's a woman." Chao Shanhai didn't have the leisure to look at the shared resources between the girls. His voice became a bit lower. "At the very least, I can see what sort of attitude normal people have towards this matter. This includes their views towards us. How much they disapprove of us. Hey, boss, if you say that, I'm afraid you won't be able to hold on for long. Thanks for the reminder." The boss and the temporary secretary looked at each other and smiled bitterly. The current situation was that the producers had injected distortion, evolution, Homo evolutus, and other sensitive elements into the new data for 10 days in the wilderness. They had also created an extremely complete system for them. Currently, the world's strongest group of people were engaged in a complex game around the relevant elements, and many large cities around the world were experiencing uncontrollable aberrant infections. It had to be said that 10 days in the wilderness, a large-scale production that could be called a game for all citizens, revealed such content. It had to be said that it was really two-directional. However, most people did not care about such things. This was because most of the changes in this world had long existed in people's endless fantasies. Especially since the era of distortion, these elements mentioned above were common in all kinds of creations and could not be considered extraordinary. This was especially true for gamers. They only cared about the quality of the game and the internal logic of the updated content. It would have been fine if the game was really terrible, but the quality of this new content was quite outstanding. The graphics and playability were both extremely strong, and there were no obvious logic bugs in the content. It was extremely attractive. Therefore, gamers had every reason to throw themselves into the game. They could swim freely within the large amount of content provided by the game. They could call friends, play online, or pursue achievements and trophies one after another. This was a very natural process. It was in line with normal human psychology. However, Luo Nan and the others wanted to go against the flow. They wanted to dig deep into the background of the game's data and malice. According to Bamboo Pole's words, it's super boring. The experience is extremely bad. I feel like I'm a moralist and a political animal that's been mutated. This is the kind of trash I used to spew. However, Luo Nan and the people around him stood at the forefront of the surging tides of this era. They possessed a clear and distinct standpoint. They had to accept it, and they had already realized the mutation. At the very least, they had to understand how to translate it. They had to do their utmost to allow more people who were not too sensitive to understand the meaning within. It was mentally taxing. It was tedious and uninteresting. It was completely predictable. This was a thankless task. Luo Nan changed the topic. How's the response right now? Bamboo Pole smirked. It was unrealistic to expect the government to take out large amounts of public power and resources to protect them airtight. In most cases, this kind of treatment only existed as a layer of warning for the family. In case his aunt and uncle, Mo Ya, and Mo Ping encountered danger, Luo Nan would have time to react. Xie Junping grunted twice. You're quite open-minded. I still have a meeting. If there's nothing else, I'll give your contact information to that kid. Sure. Less than half a minute after the call ended, he received a call from an unknown number. Luo Nan's wristband displayed the words "no risk" at this time. Luo Nan laughed and picked up the call. Just as he said hello, the person on the other end yelled, "Are your marketing team full of pigs? This hype is 2F** King shameless. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.